you have a responsibility for the direction of your life, and here's an opportunity for you to utilize something to help bring that into reality.
We need to look at technology in a neutral sense. The technology is only going to be as evil or benevolent as the people behind it.
Project Override.
The beginning.
Session 3.
Session 3, here we come. It's a
Yep.
big one.
The philosophy and transparency.
Yeah. So, disclaimer.
Yeah, there's a disclaimer. I'm not a lawyer. What about you?
I don't even know what that means.
Are you a politician?
I'm not a politician.
Yeah?
No.
Well, I'm not a politician either.
No. Yeah.
So the disclaimer, really, I'm not a lawyer. He's not a lawyer. We can't give legal advice. So anything we say about the law, we're not schooled in any formal education about law. But I myself have done 11 years of self-study of administrative paperwork, administrating property. That's my knowledge. I've tested firsthand sending paperwork into the government. I've gotten varying results, and I've found that I've come to be effectual in being able to contract my administrative property with the correct offices of the government.
Which is something I've actually been able to witness in real time. And I've seen those results. So that's part of why I kind of know you're legit.
Right. So there's a bit of credibility we're throwing around, but we're also telling you that we're not schooled in any formal legal, lawful system of schooling that gives us the credentials to tell you this is how you should do it. But this kind of goes back onto the point why the disclaimer exists.
Yeah.
Because
It's the disclaimer for the disclaimer here.
the credibility, he can vouch for me and what he's seen myself do. But these disclaimers exist because, well, it's because we don't know and we don't want to mislead people. But also, it's kind of flawed because we're reinforcing the idea that someone out there is smarter than you and you have to look outside of yourself.
Yeah. Which is, I think one of the core parts of the philosophy is that we are our own highest authority. So that first person point of view that you carry with you everywhere you go, that is always correct. That is always true. And that is your biggest asset in terms of your ability to discern, your ability to participate, and all those various qualities that you look for in these professionals. Those are qualities that you inherently have. So these are qualities we've been taught to put onto somebody else, and I think that needs to come back to our core, and we need to act from that place if we want to create the change that we want to see in the world. So
yeah, we should ask everybody. I mean, over the last 2 years, there have been different lawsuits initiated, and lawyers are being paid to entertain these lawsuits. And we haven't seen much progress with them. We've witnessed it being pushed back. And, there is obviously the stereotype of lawyers are snakes and all that. I don't want to throw any hate towards lawyers. You all who have educated yourselves and spent the money in law school, congratulations. But I just want to put forward the point, just like back in the day when most people were illiterate and they attended a church and they had a priest. That priest, it was up to him for his own subjective interpretation of the Bible itself that he could tell the followers what that Bible means. And so if we look at that example, we can look at lawyers just like priests, and we're relying on them to say, we're illiterate in the law, so we want you to tell us what the law means. But we are not illiterate. We can all read, and there is statutes and legislation out there. We all have the opportunity to read. So we actually do have the power to interpret what those laws are for ourselves.
Absolutely. Yeah. Which is kind of ties into one of the points I wanted to bring up. It was just the idea of letting go of those external authorities, because it's very, very much part of our culture. And through that promise of somebody else taking care of it for you, being able to interpret the Bible, that has sort of created this promise of perpetual childhood, which means like your minimum contribution means your needs will be taken care of. And so that minimum contribution, one of those core pieces is the vote.
Right. We
Right,
have
so-
we have a vote,
Yeah.
and we are voting for our representative to reflect our values. And how many times have we voted and that politician actually hasn't represented our values or the promises that they told us that they were going to represent?
Or even the lack of choice. I mean, I've very, very, very rarely seen anything out there that represents any of the core values I want to bring forward, even if they have pieces. It's very, very rare. So
Yeah, so there is a fundamental flaw in the fact that we're convinced that the minimum civic duty we have in our society is to vote, but that vote and the system is perpetuating this flaw over our own free will. We're all brought into this world or this plane, and we're told we have free will. And we are, every time we're voting, we're giving away our free will and we're letting someone else exercise that free will for us for the greater good. So, of course, the politician is reflecting the decisions we want within society. And so when we're giving away that power, we're giving away our free will choice. And of course, we're waiting and delayed for the change when it doesn't happen.
yeah, we're also giving our consent for whatever is taking place by voting. It's like a renewal of your contract in a way.
Right.
You're saying, yes, I agree to participate in this system, and there's no option not to agree. You're not given an option. It's either you participate or you don't, and if you don't, somehow you're outside of that or you're going against the greater good, which is not true. It's just a narrative that's been propagated. Which is the subjectivity versus the objectivity of law, which is kind of what we're talking about, or the subjectivity or objectivity of morals or ethics, or of your right to self-determination. Right.
Right. Yeah.
So
it's again back to the right to self-determination. You get to choose who you contract with. If you're continuing to choose to contract with a corrupt entity, how are you going to get a different result?
yeah.
We're looking at a system, not the puppets that we get to choose between. We're looking at a system, and that system is fundamentally flawed. So every time we vote, every time we renew that contract, we're choosing the right of self-determination to recontract with this government infrastructure, this government structure, and therefore we're going to get the same results.
Mm-hmm. Well, and that brings it back to the way that I interpret how the WEF, like Agenda 2030, Agenda 2021, whatever it is, they work. They're like a top-down infrastructure where those decisions made by somebody somewhere is sort of implemented, and then they work with the local municipal levels to bring about different aspects of that. So it's like a corruption that you don't see happening because they sneak stuff in and they sell it to us. And so what we're kind of talking about is a degenerative system that we're not participating in, and what we're proposing is a regenerative system that works from the bottom up. We're back engineering, like I'd maybe said before. And so you can take this local quorum and you can start to work on a local level to work on projects that can, like, rehabilitate your local environment. You can work with whatever native elders that are participating on your local level. You can work with whoever is there, and you can actually utilize the infrastructure on that level, and it doesn't need that oversight. Does that make sense?
That made sense, yeah.
Yeah.
Because the macro view, the centralized authority, top-down model, it's a foreign entity far away that isn't familiar to us. But we're saying globalism is right, and Agenda 2030 will save us. But what will save us is addressing our local needs, and that's getting involved on a civic level in our own community, and if possible, the municipality. And I know most people vote federally. It has occurred to me that, myself included, I don't care to vote on a municipal level. And so that's something to consider if we do get the chance to implement, say, through municipality, this technology, we're changing the way we organize and how we input value into our community.
Yeah.
So this is where the resource registry kind of comes into play.
Yeah.
So we all have value, and there is value in the one thing we all have is time.
Yes. It's our most valuable asset.
And they kind of hide that from us with our birth certificate. When you do a little bit of research there is a calculation based on your future potential of labor, which is then bonded, and then private bankers loan based off those bonds to governments.
Yeah.
So why is it that we aren't leveraging our time or future time and securing that? And these are possibilities, not necessarily we're going to utilize these things.
No, it's a back engineering again of taking what they've created and using it as a transition out of their system, because we have to start with where we're at, and that is where we're at, right? You can't. Yeah, where are you going to fall if you fall?
Mm-hmm. So the resource registry with the blockchain, we're looking at resource-backed tokens. So we could resource-back token your time, your skills, and these tokens just represent something that's in your inventory. You could also have a bunch of dusty tools, and we could tokenize that hammer that you have that you're not necessarily going to barter or sell. You could if you wanted to, but you could also lend it out, and you could have a record of a borrowing.
Mm-hmm.
And so these are things that we're looking at, as well as if you have land, well, maybe your land has trees on it. And why don't those trees on your land have value?
Mm-hmm.
And then we can kind of go into, again, this resource registry is the parallel running land titles registry. And so as a transitionatory system, we're shifting over titles to property to this new registry.
Yeah, nice. Just to kind of streamline it a bit, to get back to the philosophy. So we brought up a bit, you mentioned that Varus met your ethical considerations for what you were envisioning.
Right.
Do you mind expanding a bit on
Right.
that?
So a system that is non-invasive, that's voluntary. Of course, we're not going to force a system on anybody.
No.
It's going to survive by its own merit.
Mm-hmm.
There's optional privacy. We don't need everything to be transparent. There's some things in my life that I'm going to navigate in a social world that I want to restrict to a few people.
Such as your vaccination status.
Right, exactly. Yeah, your health concerns, they don't need to be public or shown to a restaurant every time you need to go somewhere.
Yeah.
And so this is the optional privacy, especially with currency as well. Cash is, of course, the traditional vehicle in which you can maintain privacy when transacting.
Yeah.
So if we're going to have a new system come up that involves a new sort of currency, we want to maintain that privacy.
Mm-hmm.
Along with that, of course, these public blockchains as a service, these are running our government operations as we disintermediate government. They are transparent records and they're verifiable. So we can grow the trust with this new operating system we have for society on a local level to a macro level, and it's both transparent and verifiable. And then, of course, the way blockchains and decentralized ledgers and distributed ledgers work is that they're highly secure because they're distributed and decentralized. There's no single point of failure.
Yes.
And then, of course, the other consideration is the low energy cost. So we're looking at CPUs instead of high intensive Bitcoin mining machines that are highly specialized. The more money you have, the more hash rate you have. We're looking at something that's accessible to the everyday person. So both Cordal and Varus have the ability to use old smartphones, old laptops to mine and secure the network while also being able to stake. Cordal is a little bit different. You're not mining, you're minting, and that's on a time consensus. So these things we can refer to as, with the ethical considerations, we're building on neutral public infrastructure.
Yeah. Yeah. Which gets into the idea that it's the person behind the program,
right,
that creates the outcome.
Right. So there's that, I don't know if it's a myth or a bias that as we progress with technology, it's going to be fundamentally evil.
Yeah, the singularity.
The technocratic singularity or whatever it is.
Yeah.
Yeah. So we need to look at technology in a neutral sense, and the technology is only going to be as evil or benevolent as the people behind it. So if we have all these ethical considerations and we're looking at who the people are behind, say, the Varus or the Cordal project, we're looking at these people as, yes, I want to work with these people and I'll contribute to these people who have built this system and use their system because I trust them. I believe they're ethical.
Yeah. I mean, which is more than you can say for what we have now.
Correct. Yeah. The moral foundation for the current system doesn't meet my standards.
No, me either. So kind of just as we conclude this sort of little section, just talking about the philosophy here, we got a little bit detailed, and we're going to expand more on that as we go. We got some stuff with contracts coming up next, but just as the sort of, to bring it all back home, the way I look at it is I don't choose to participate in this current government because I don't see it as representative of any of the values that I want, nor do I see the actions taken by those individuals as representative of the actions I would like to see in the world at large. There's far too much harm being done. There's far too much hidden information. There's far too much discrimination. There's just, the list is endless. And so I'm not a political person. I never have been. I do not enjoy politics. I do not want to participate in those types of things. But what I see is an infrastructure and a system that is not working, and I want to bring about that change. So even within this new system that we're talking about changing, I'm not even sure I would want to participate. I just want to create the potentiality so that we can be directly involved should we choose it. And so as an individual, that's again, that first person point of view. You have no responsibility to partake in any of this. It's more of you have a responsibility for the direction of your life and what would you like that to look like, and here's an opportunity for you to utilize something to help bring that into reality. Does that kind of make sense?
I couldn't have said it any better. That's
Thanks,
great.
bro.
Let's move into contracts.
Cool. See you next time.
Project override.